All right, so it's been a little bit since we've spoken, and actually, I guess 3 episodes now have gone by for MobLand, 6, 7, and 8. And I was just taking a look because I had mentioned it earlier. So there's going to be 10 episodes. I was thinking that there might only be 8, but I just got done watching the most recent episode, episode 8, and obviously it leaves it on a cliffhanger. So there's definitely 2 more episodes because that didn't conclude anything at all. So let's hop into it. Let's hop into our review here. We'll jump around a bit. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers. I mean, it's kind of hard to talk and review things without talking about spoilers. So I'll try and do a little bit of a timeline with 6, 7, and 8. If I recall correctly, so in episode 5, it ends with Vron's car getting bombed, right? Maeve had sent out Paul to go bomb Vron's car. So now Richie Stevenson has lost both his son to a Harrigan and now his wife to a Harrigan. And he's obviously seeking vengeance now. And yeah, so let's open with that.
Well, two things that I want to comment on, and I'm forgetful. So remember that the second one is Brandon. The first one is when Ron's car got blown up and they all show up at the house, and Conrad took responsibility for it.
Yep.
At first, I thought he had figured out it was Maeve, and being the patriarch, the leader of the family, he was doing what a good leader would do. These people are my responsibility, so whatever they do is my responsibility, so this is my responsibility. And while I believe he suspects it was Maeve and whatnot, I after watching that episode and the next two, I don't think that was the intention. I think Maeve is batshit crazy, and I think that Conrad is not far behind.
Well, so yeah, I was happy to see Conrad take ownership in a sense because I kind of had similar thoughts to you in that, he's the leader, so he needs to make it as though, he's the one who made this decision. Now, I do believe he knows that. I mean, he knows that Maeve did this, right? He knows for a fact that it was Maeve who set all this up and everything. I think that he's taking ownership because he's losing control, right? He's not the leader, and that's the issue. And he's not doing anything about Maeve to ensure that that's known. So, you know, that was my takeaway from it, is that he's taking ownership because he doesn't want to look as though he's not in control of what's going on. He's not unaware of what's going on. That was my take on it. I don't think he's necessarily like crazy or anything. I think he's just can't control his wife.
And he's unwilling to take the steps necessary to control her.
Right. It's kind of baffling. A recurring theme. I've come to think that Kevin is my favorite character in this series, and you see him really start to take shape over these 3 episodes. I mean, it opens up with him calling out Maeve, like, "What the hell just happened?" Harry and I have been working on this. We did all this work to get the peace and everything like that, so on and so forth, and it just recurs. It again happens in episode 7, happens in episode 8, and you know he's standing up to his dad. We did learn a little bit, actually. There were little peaks of things. So Conrad, what he referred to himself as the Conrad 100 Guns Harrigan, something like that.
Yeah.
100 Guns Butcher, something Harrigan. And we also saw finally, we had talked about this before, but we've seen a little bit more now with their compound and everybody having to come here and everything. We've seen more uh, people, right? More people under their control and things like that. So we are getting a little bit more understanding, although it's still very quaint in terms of how much power, how much control, and what the history is of Conrad and the Harrigans, but it's building up a little bit better so that I have a bit more of an understanding as to who this person might be and to why Harry might not be doing a lot of the stuff that you and I have suggested and talked about. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more, but yeah, I liked Kevin calling this out because he's saying what everybody's thinking. What the hell is going on? Why are we doing this? And and yeah, I mean, so this kind of leads into Maeve screwing things up even further, right? So Serafina and Brandon had gone to Antwerp to do this deal for money, and Maeve informs Richie that the kids are going to be there, hoping that Richie's just going to take retribution on Serafina, and for whatever reason, because Maeve's such a hard ass, I guess, that he's going to leave Brandon alone. Like, what in God's name was this woman thinking? It is, and I so appreciated the fact that Brandon dies. I mean, I liked Brandon, but to really stick it to Maeve, I mean, this is baffling. And I'm curious to see how this kind of plays with Eddie, right? Because Eddie's there whenever Maeve makes that call to Richie. And, and
But
yeah.
Maeve even said to Conrad that out of the children, those two are the ones she would be most willing to sacrifice.
Yeah.
So, you know, she didn't care about Brandon that damn much.
She didn't. But it still leads to why. It had, like, why would you do this at all? I mean, if just to get rid of Serafina, which, first of all, I mean, you could have done this for literally her entire life at any other point. But why would you do it now? Why would you put your son, who you might not care about as much, but you still care about him? Why would you put him in harm's way? Why, like, her decision making, again, I don't think she is cognitively impaired. I think she's just a nutcase. She's a psychopath, man. Like, and stupid, and plain out stupid. I think she is from a bygone era, man. I mean, the amount of narcissism that this woman has to believe that she is somehow in control of anything is just mind-boggling. And it even plays out. We can kind of get to that in a little bit later, but it kind of plays to that whenever Serafina actually returns home. But yeah, so I mean, they spent this time. The main point of these two episodes were that uh, Harry was trying to get back Serafina and Brandon from Antwerp because that whole deal went to shit. And Richie apparently had employed the Mexicans, it seems, the cartels, in in being able to use the information that may have given them, found them, and are the ones that were hired to kill them, basically. Uh, and kind of in the background, we had, what did we have? I forget the woman's name. Janet, maybe? Is it Jan? Yeah, Jan, who is the friend, quote unquote friend. She's the informant for the police who's trying to get close to
Oh yeah.
Harry's wife, right? She had contacted Harry's wife and ended up meeting with her and everything. And I'll tell you, I loved the scene with Paul coming into that bar or whatever. He is a very menacing face whenever he's talking to her. I mean, I don't know what about his countenance makes it so, but it was really cool to see that. I mean, he really did. He didn't make. I mean, he made some threats later, but ultimately just asking, "Hey, what are you doing here?" type of thing. Just the way he was talking and his facial expressions, very great acting to really look quite menacing. And yeah, any thoughts on any of that stuff? I also appreciated Paul when they were talking about. Paul's like standing in the background because Conrad's saying stuff, Brandon's saying stuff about the bombs and stuff, and how this was all planned, and how he's traveling around with uh, Simtex and stuff, and he's like, no, it was 4 pounds of Simtex. He's like, no, it was 2 pounds, 2 pounds of C4, and he was like, 4 days. Actually, it was only 2 days. Like, he's just standing in the background, like making these comments. I don't know. I just appreciated him a little bit more.
Yeah, let's be correct in what we're saying.
Yeah. What's that reminds me, actually, it's a movie or a show where they talk about that with precision in speech. I don't know, maybe it'll come to me, but you have to be precise in your speech whenever it comes to these things. But yeah, so again, not a whole lot I would say happened per se, and unless you can think of anything between episodes 6 and 7 outside of they're kidnapped, the deal went down that was went to shit, uh, and
Yeah, I want to point out something that it's kind of minor and whatnot, but I mean, you know, poor him. It needs to be pointed out. Brandon did something right,
yeah,
right? I mean, that deal was a good deal. That wasn't Brandon's screw up. That was Maeve.
no, it was, yeah,
Brandon
and
and
that's what Serafina even says that, or yeah, in the most recent episode, right? Whenever she finally gets home and everything, she's like, it was a good deal.
yeah, and that poor bastard. He's had a run of bad luck. He he just wanted to get back in the good graces of his dad, and he was looking and looking, and he finally found it. He finally got it set up. He took a huge hit on any share of the monies that he might have made. I mean, he did for once. He finally did everything right, and he dies.
Yeah. Well, such is life sometimes, I suppose. That kind of reminds me, remember, and I don't know if anything has come from it yet or if anything will come from it, but Maeve tries covering her own ass, telling Conrad that she had received a text from Richie about all this, right? Which she most certainly did not. And Conrad asks to see the text, and she tries gaslighting him and everything. Well, trust is going to go out the window if this is the way that we go about this, so on and so forth. And I will say, I don't know if Conrad's blinded by history and trust and hope or love or what, but the constant oversight of seeing Maeve as the issue with all of these things. I mean, he knows that she's an issue, but to miss the fact that it's her behind the scenes causing many of these problems where they're thinking it's some mole of some sort, which apparently, there is to some extent, maybe who that is. It could be Maeve. We don't know. But for some of this, yeah, I don't know if he's blinded by it, if he knows it and isn't addressing it, or what's going on. But Conrad's behavior and interactions with a lot of the other members of his family or associates is, I think, alienating and pushing them away more, right? Where he's trying to place blame on folks who don't have blame, whether that's Harry or Harry's wife, whether that's heck his own son, right? Kevin's, like I said, I've really appreciated Kevin sticking up for himself and poking back at a lot of this, saying the stuff everybody wants to say. Uh, but yeah, man, I don't know, Conrad. It's kind of baffling as to how they got to this point if this is the way they've behaved their entire careers.
And well, not only is Conrad screwing up on that level, but he's trying to push his sexual overload onto every female around him.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
God's sakes, man, your son's wife, your number one guy's wife, all this
and
shit.
his daughter.
Oh yeah, and yeah, true enough. He was chasing the daughter
Yeah.
too.
And then not
And
reining in his grandson, right? I mean, the fact that, Eddie is now banging Harry's daughter, right? Which is a whole other thing that has now occurred. And I was actually hoping, I mean, I get Harry's daughter is, I liked her a lot. And in the last 2 episodes, I've liked her much less. Uh, Granted, she's only 16, so some things can be forgiven whenever it comes to her decision making and stuff like that, because she's quite an intelligent person, it would seem, and capable, and has ambition and stuff. But then to just have the angst of a teenager, I guess, and wanting to rebel against her parents for her current situation, falling in with a freaking loser like Eddie. That's something else.
Eddie would be a very, very bad choice for a daughter that you loved.
Yeah, no doubt. And so, I mean, this kind of culminates, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, it really culminates here in the most recent episode where, boy, a lot of stuff happens and a lot of things come to light. I don't even know where to start. If you have something, feel free to jump in,
I
but
do. I have a.
go ahead. Yeah.
There. I forget who Harry was talking to, but he said he and Kevin are going to take over. The king is dead. Do you remember that part?
Who was saying this? Harry
Harry.
and Kevin?
Harry was talking to somebody, and he said that he and Kevin were going to take over because the king is dead.
Oh,
Meaning
I don't.
Conrad is.
Right.
I just can't remember at any point where Harry and Kevin spoke about that.
Are you sure that? So there was a scene. The only scene I recall, and I could be missing something. He confronts Eddie about having sex with his daughter, right? And I
Right?
thought it was a really great scene. He does a lot of great stuff. Then he leaves the room and comes back, and basically says that, like, hey, at the end of this, you're going to be, the one in control. You're going to be the leader. You're going to be at the top. I'm going to be right there next to your side. Blah 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 blah. Almost demonstrating to Eddie that, hey, I've got your back. We're good. I do work for the Harrigans. We're part of it. But then he ends it with, and I'll push you
Put
over.
you off.
Right? I'm going to bring you up to the top. We're going to be there together, looking out over everything, and then I'm pushing you over. Right? So aside from that, I don't recall. Yeah, I don't recall the conversation. Although he and Kevin had a number of conversations in the vehicle, or maybe it was with his wife. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it to see that, or maybe
Yeah,
somebody in
because
the comments
honestly, I
knows.
don't remember where he and Kevin had that conversation, but he was talking to. Oh, actually, it was the guy up in the parking lot that got thrown off after he told him who the
Okay,
mole
yeah,
was.
one of Richie Stevenson's henchmen. Yeah,
Right, one of his
let the
guys.
guns in. Yeah.
That's who he was talking to, and he said that.
Yeah. Do you want to be in the fentanyl trade? Do you want to be with? Do you want to be with us? Do you want to be with the winners as
Right.
opposed to the losers? Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that was a good scene. So that's something that we learned, right? So obviously, as we had called it, Archie, poor guy, got murdered for no reason. He wasn't a mole. He wasn't a double crosser, a snake, or anything like that. So he was killed, right off the bat for something he didn't do. There still is a mole. We don't know who it is, but now it would appear that at least Harry knows who it is. Uh, any guesses as to who that might be?
I'm still saying Maeve.
Could
Like I
be, and
said, all along I've said it's either Maeve or Paul.
yeah, and I'm curious as to what extent the quote unquote mole is. Is it, because Maeve clearly is, in the sense of, well, she's giving up information and locations and things like that, right? I mean, she did that obviously, and she's also gotten Archie killed, and she's trying to threaten other people. But if it's as far as like a mole in the sense of, I don't know, something else, but although I can't think of any other things that we've seen where a mole might be, right? Where it's hey, here's the drops of certain drugs, or here's trade routes, anything like that. I haven't seen any of that. So Maeve is the only one that I know for a fact has done shady stuff behind everyone's back. But then if there's some other type of informant, well, I guess somebody had exposed where Archie's body was, right? So there was that aspect of it. The only other person I could possibly think of would be Kevin's wife, but I don't know. I don't see that.
I
I
don't
don't
think
see
she
that at
knows
all.
enough to do that.
Well, exactly. She wouldn't. Well, she would know some of the peripheral stuff. And that's the only reason why Maeve would know the exact details, right? Maeve would know exactly where that Archie was killed at the Harrigan's house, although I don't think she wants to bring down Conrad and the family and stuff, which is why she may have kept it vague. And she knew exactly where Conrad's body was, right? Same thing with the attorney. She would have known all this as well. Um, that leaves Kevin's wife, who actually would know, okay, Archie died over there, but she doesn't know the details because she wasn't there. But Kevin would have told her along with the rest of the family. And then also, I don't think she would have known though where Archie's body was. She may have known that Harry took care of it, but that's just because that's what Harry does. So yeah, I'm not seeing it as being her. I agree. I think the most likely suspect is Maeve, but I'm just assuming, with the way writing goes and stuff, it's going to be somebody you're not expecting as much. Although every once in a while they do it exactly the way you would think. So could be.
No, well, I also wasn't expecting Maeve to be the batshit lunatic that she is.
She really is, man. She's quite insufferable actually, because it even goes to the point you see they're towards the end, right? So Conrad's, and this is the other problem, man. These people, I don't know how it lasts because even the family members are against one another, right? And you've got Conrad trying to employ Kevin's wife to spy on Kevin, and report whatever goings on or is happening there. You've got Maeve going to Kevin, and I didn't entirely understand this. I have some guesses, but she's talking about how the inheritant of all this will be Kevin and his brother. And Kevin's like, well, Brandon's dead basically, so I guess it just leaves me, doesn't it? And she goes, no, your other
Your other
brother.
brother, yeah, who we've
And the
never
question,
heard of
right, is
before.
correct. Now, I didn't know if she's referring to Harry in this situation where, it's not a blood brother, but, is kind of considered a brother or a son, what have you. And, that really pissed off Harry or pissed off Kevin, I think. Or, and this would make less sense to me, maybe talking about Eddie, even though that's Kevin's son, which, it is Eddie. Conrad is Eddie's father. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah, you think so? Yeah, because he
Yeah,
was banging Kevin's.
that's right. And I think she even I think I'd have to go back to the episodes. I think she may have already been pregnant with Eddie,
How come
actually.
she
Who
likes
knew?
Eddie so damn much and she hates Serafina then?
I don't know. Maybe it's because she can shape Eddie, or maybe it's because he's a man. I mean, it honestly could just be that he's a guy. I don't know. Or the fact that she can shape him. I don't know. But yeah, Eddie's his brother. Good Lord. Um, So, okay, I think that answers that actually.
Yeah, I think it does too. I think you nailed that. Huh.
So, some other crazy stuff that occurred here is, and we'll get to the Cat McAllister stuff because I'm curious your thoughts on that. But kind of wrapping up some of the other stuff that occurred. So, the police obviously have been, sitting in the background here doing their thing with their informant along with some other stuff. But they brought in a supposed, not a heavy hitter, but an experienced detective or something like that who has broken up crime families in the past and everything. And I like that actor. Actually, he usually plays the little German Nazi in a whole bunch of different movies and stuff.
Yeah,
But
he reminds me of Droopy.
yeah, he does actually. And he comes in, he's supposed to be helping Fisk and everything, and the whole idea is that they're going to partner with Richie to bring down the Harrigans. And the detectives, Fisk and the female detective, I forget her name, they go and they meet with Richie. And I like kind of the way it goes down, although I was completely blown away by the fact that he killed them both. uh, I'm curious your thoughts on that. I mean, that, don't get me wrong, the UK is not known for their heavy-handed police force or anything like that, but the idea of murdering two cops and somehow getting away with it, the force not finding out about it, or at least not suspecting, or it just seems like that's a whole lot of big can of worms you wouldn't want to bring down on your head, as particularly as a crime family. Although then again, Richie has nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, I just wonder how far into dementia and craziness Richie has now gone that he's willing to do that. And that was kind of superfluous. I mean, there was no need for Richie to kill them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the point that I didn't get. I just don't see why. You could have just told him to pound sand,
And
right?
I at this point, my question is how corrupt is Droopy?
Oh, he's very corrupt. That was the thing, right? As soon as he killed those two, he walked over and said, it seems like Droopy had been under Richie's thumb for decades now, because he says they go back to 70 since 75.
Well, yeah, but then he was talking about how he arrested him those
Oh, he
times.
did, and put him in jail a few times, but also, how many times he's gotten out now. So, it could be one of those things where, look, you're in a situation where there is no getting out of it, but here's where we can lessen it, and I can help you do so. And, you scratch my back, I scratch yours type of thing to something of that extent. Because, I mean, he even said, Richie asked him, who owns who or whatever, and he's like, you own me, and that's the way that it's been. So, yeah, I'm curious to see kind of how that plays out. I honestly was a little disappointed that he killed the two cops, not because I cared about their characters. It just seemed nonsensical to me. Uh, and I don't know how they're going to just sweep that under the rug. Like the idea that the police force isn't going to come, with SWAT teams knocking down Richie for having murdered two police officers. Uh, but particularly in the UK, I mean, where that you don't even have close to the same amount of civil protections that you would in the United States, and reasonable search and seizure, things like that. I don't know what their warrant systems are like or anything of that nature. Seems to me like they could very easily just come in and do whatever the hell they want, even under the slightest of suspicions. So, well, what are your thoughts there with this whole Cat Williams character?
That
I think
was kind of
Cat something.
disappointing. Uh, I don't know. It's that's one of those criminal fairy tales that there's some ultimate overlord.
Right. And this
Someone
is
that
very
everyone else will be answerable. That doesn't seem reasonable. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I 100% agree. She seems to be an American. What? Don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it's some politician or something like that. With that being said, right, I think there's some truth and extent to the idea of, potentially she is this Switzerland middleman type of person, right? I broker deals between crime families, between crime organizations, so on and so forth. And so a mutual respect type of thing to where you don't, necessarily harm this person, but that doesn't necessarily mean power, right? It's just respect. So, and I don't know, maybe she has enough pull to call on people, but again, as crime bosses, as crime owners, like, why would I be scared? You're not scared of the one over there or that one over there. Why would you care about this one over here? So yeah, I don't know where they're going with her. What do you think her role is, or her, yeah, anything about her?
If I had to go complete B grade garbage movie, I would say she is the current head of some ancient criminal society that has passed down the power for generations and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Uh, if I had to go with something to try to make it realistic or whatever, I would say maybe she was CIA or something like that. That I don't know, somehow
You
captured
think
power
maybe?
and has the military capability to back it up.
Yeah, that's where it's so hard. The only thing I could think of is, and I don't see how this would be, but she controls the money, right? Maybe she's the banker that houses all of these different organizations funds, like their at least the majority of their funds or something, to where she could tie that up to some extent, essentially crippling them.
Yeah, maybe she's the head of the IMF. Hadn't thought
Right.
of that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I could see CIA type stuff, like, because if you had that, you're gonna have to have essentially the only thing you're going up against would be like a United States government type of thing. Like, oh yeah, you've got lots of money, that's cool and happy and handy, but it's nothing compared to this, right? Both in terms of monetary wealth, but also military power. But even then, it's like, how much could you bring forth, even as a hell, even as the CIA director, right? Uh, Whenever it comes to that, especially without it being public. Then again, the fact that they're crime organizations makes it very easy to bring about a lot of that, I guess, right? Like, that's kind of your whole job, so to speak. But yeah, I'm thinking she might be the head of some bank or something, one of these massive banks, and happens to just be laundering all the money for these different organizations, and holds the purse, strings to the purse. So could be that. Uh,
So
uh,
I do like the fact that they showed just how much quote unquote loyalty can mean. All right. Jaime Lopez absolutely hated Conrad Harrigan because of an insult to his dad, so much so that he was willing to, uh, murder his child and let him know that it was him doing it on behalf of Richie. And then, because of one call from Kat, he completely dumps Richie. So now Kevin is thinking, "Wow, what a good time to do business with Jaime right after he's killed my brother and whatnot."
yeah, well, it's funny too with that, Conrad going on, wanting to do this stuff with Jaime, Kevin pointing out the fact that, like, you insulted his father, and I think this was even before they killed Brandon, but
Yeah, it
wanted to do
was.
this work with the cartels, and how you insulted their dad, decades ago, whenever he was just 14 or what have you, and Connor kind of shrugging it off type of thing. And it's like, you opened the episode 6 yelling at Kevin when he asked you about it, re-quoting what Richie had said to you, and that being your justification for blowing up Vron, right? Because he insulted you, and that was enough to then start a war between the two families. Like, I don't know, that just disconnect, or lack of self-reflection there.
Right.
I
I
just
can
thought
dish
was
it out,
kind of
but I
funny.
can't take it.
Exactly. And yeah, that was something else. I I don't know. Uh, oh, another thing. So we have revisited. So Kevin's obviously in a very bad place, and I think wanting to dish out some of his angst and anxiety and frustrations and everything. So he went to that nursing home in search of the prison guard, or probation officer, or what have you, the juvie guard, who
Yeah,
had
Rugsby.
raped him in the past, and he hasn't found him yet. But that is something that is occurring, and is playing out in the background. So I guess we are revisiting that, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or takeaways or observations that you had on these?
I am trying to think. Really, I mean, that we covered so much territory in such a small time. So, okay, here's a question: why do you think I can't remember the guy's name? The one from Richie's organization that was going to come over, but then Harry wound up tossing him off the top. I can't remember his name, but why do you think Richie killed him? I mean, why do you think Harry killed him?
Yeah, I have no idea. The only thing I can, well, I guess actually, could be a couple things. Clearly, it's implied that the information he had about who the mole was is why Harry killed him, right?
Right.
So it's something to do with who this mole is. Now, if the mole truly is Maeve, as we suspect, I don't know why Harry would give two shits. and kill
Right.
the guy.
Now, if
Which
it's
leads me,
Jan, I mean, not Jan, but what's Harry's wife's name?
I forget off the top of my head, but right. So if it's his wife, which again, I don't think it's his wife, or
I
potentially
don't
his
think so
daughter.
either.
I don't think it's his daughter either. But yeah, right. I mean, it's the idea is that it's somebody that Harry cares about, or at least cares enough about that he wants to protect them. That's the only conclusion I can think of. Although none of the characters make sense to me as to who
Well,
it
the
would
only
be.
one that I can think of that Harry would care about that would be privy to all that information and would
Restate
be
that.
completely out of left field that no one is suspecting, myself included, Serafina.
Yeah. Why would
Wasn't
Harry care enough about Serafina though?
because she's an intelligent Harrigan that's not crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, but if you're, I don't know. Again, that's to me, it doesn't seem like it'd be enough there for it. Again, possibility, but to me, I mean, it'd be the same. He seems to have a good relationship with the attorney, right? But not enough to like protect her against like you're putting my life at risk too and my family, right? So I really don't know. I'm it's definitely it's intriguing, but I don't know. Then again, who knows? Maybe Harry just got the information that he wanted and killed the guy, but it seems to truly be implied that it has to do something with who the mole is.
Yeah, it may be one of those things that if he's willing to betray Richie, then he'll be willing to betray us later.
Right.
So I
And
got the info. Yeah.
again, I
Out.
mean, I could think of a few people. It's just they don't make sense to me as to why they'd be the mole, right? Because honestly, the only ones I could see Harry truly wanted to protect possibly would be his wife, his daughter, and Kevin. And I don't see any of them being the mole. So, although, it could be that it's nobody that he actually cares about, but he wants the information to himself to be able to leverage that. I
True enough.
could be that. Although, yeah, it could be that. I don't know. I am very curious to see kind of how that plays out and who it may be. Well, I guess we'll conclude there unless you have anything else.
I'm thinking. No. I think we covered just about everything.
All right. Well, until next week, hopefully we'll try and do a review on each of these last two episodes as solo reviews because I'm sure there'll be lots to recap for each individual episode. So until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on episode 9's recap.